Howdy! My name is Nonat, and my hair is doing its own thing today, so I'm not gonna worry about it, but that's fine because we're talking about spells. There's some crazy wizard hair joke in there somewhere. I couldn't find anything though. When Secrets of Magic came out, of course it brought out tons of new spells, which means we've got some brand new cantrips to talk about. I've talked about all the cantrips released in the core rulebook and the Advanced Player's Guide, but now we've got a good number of new cantrips in this new book. About 15 cantrips to be precise, so let's go ahead and jump into it after a quick word from our sponsor. Hey kid, could I interest you in some, Battle Zoo books? Now don't go around telling people this. Or do. But the Battle Zoo line of books is coming out with a bunch of new stuff for Pathfinder 2e, you hear me? Now keep this on the down low, but tell your friends, but keep it our little secret, but also tell everyone you know. They've got no less than 3 supplements planned with more in the future. Right now, we've got 3 amazing things to look forward to, one of which has just been released. You can already get your hands on this Battle Zoo bestiary full of really cool and awesome monsters that were designed by players of the Pathfinder 2e system and then refined by professional game designers like Stephen Glicker and Mark Seifter. It even comes with a whole new subsystem of crafting and upgrading equipment through monster parts. What? Are you a player? Monsters aren't your thing? Well, then you can look forward to the playable Dragon Ancestry supplement written by Mark Seifter to be able to play as a dragon. Shh. I'm not talking Dragonborn. I'm not talking kobolds. I'm talking a full, playable dragon ancestry. Are you looking at me? Are you understanding me? We're talking 4 legs. We're talking wings. We're talking big, pointy teeth, breathing breath weapons. That's coming soon. Look forward to that. Okay. Maybe you don't need the bestiary. Maybe you don't need a new ancestry. But you definitely need something to play, and that's where Jewel of the Indigo Isles comes in. The same great developers who brought you that Battle Zoo bestiary have also written a brand new campaign. It's pirate themed. You're gonna be all over the open ocean checking out these islands for levels 1 to 11. That is a 10 character level long campaign that you get to enjoy with your friends. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below and you can get your hands on some of these really nice deals. The Jewel of the Indigo Isle and Dragon Ancestry haven't been released yet, so you can still get that pre-order discount on them, or pick up the Battle Zoo bestiary and get instant PDF access to it. But if anyone asks, you didn't hear it from me. Starting off, we have Approximate, and yes, I am using Archives of Nethys instead of the PDF of the rulebook for the background of today's video. This is mostly because it's going to be easier for both of us, easier for me to display in my editing, and easier for you to know exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of the times, spells are cut off at the bottom of a page and start back up at the top of a page. Also, they're not organized by spell level, so I'd be jumping all over that entire chapter of the rulebook trying to find these spells, so I'm just going to use Archives of Nethys and show it right above my head there. But starting off with one of the most amazing cantrips in Secrets of Magic, we have Approximate. You are either going to love this cantrip and use it every chance you get, or you're gonna think, why does that exist? Approximate, available to every single spellcaster in the game, is a 2-action cantrip that you target a cubic foot of area. You pick one type of thing, and you will know approximately how many of that thing is in the cubic foot. But I find this hilarious. This isn't going to give you anything specific. You're just gonna know there's about this much. The example it gives is if there's 180 copper in a pile, you can cast Approximate and you'll know there's about 200. You don't know if it's more, you don't know if it's less. It's like looking in a jar of jelly beans and you know, okay, there's about 150. Give or take 20 or 30. Also, it does need to specifically be objects, but I think what could be really cool and a real missed opportunity is the heightened versions of Approximate. I think at higher levels, like character level 9, like heighten it at 5th spell level, first off, increase the area. I think you can increase the area a lot, and maybe as a 5th level spell, you can increase the area to like 100 foot, or maybe as like a 9th level spell, you could increase the area to like a mile and increase the range by a ton, and also allow you to target things, not just objects. Think of how cool this spell would be if there's an approaching army and you can fly above them, cast Approximate on the mile, and say, okay, there is about 1,000 soldiers coming. You know, that you don't need to know how many soldiers are coming. You know there's about 1,000. That would be so cool. This would also be an interesting counter to something like an illusion. I don't know what the interaction with that would be. Let's say there's 180 illusionary copper coins and you cast Approximate. Do you find out there's 0? I'm curious. Talk about it in the comments below. That would be an interesting interaction. It does say the spell is fooled by objects disguised as other objects, but I don't know how that would work with illusion. Next up is a spell I have wanted for years. I've often allowed my GM to homebrew Ghost Sound to work similar to this. Bullhorn. For 2 actions, you enchant your own voice to be heard at a massively increased distance for 10 minutes. This allows anyone within 500 feet to hear you clearly. You basically sound like me on an average day. For those of you who've never seen me in person, I'm very loud. A really nice line they added though is that despite the volume, your voice doesn't get obnoxious or distorted. If someone's standing 10 feet from you or 500 feet from you, they hear you just as clearly. This also gives you a +1 bonus to coerce or perform in large auditorium spaces. I feel like a large venue is the term it uses. I would picture anything where you're talking to dozens of people as a venue. You know, if you are in the town square trying to yell to all of the commoners passing by, I'd call that a venue and give you the bonus. What I love, and they did do it with Bullhorn, is as you heighten it, the range increases. At character 9th level, it increases to 1,200 feet, and at character 13th level, you can be heard up to a mile away. That's phenomenal. Like, this is super useful in like a city set. Just imagine you're in a city that is only like a mile radius, so you can just walk to the middle of the city. You don't know where your allies are, but you can just say, "Hey, Frank, meet me at the inn in 30 minutes," and then walk off. That's how I'd use Bullhorn, and I love it. Galeblast is a cool little small AoE spell for arcane and arcane and primal casters. For 2 actions, you affect all creatures in a 5-foot emanation. That is every single adjacent square, and they make fortitude saves. If they crit succeed, nothing happens. If they normal succeed, they take damage equal to half your spellcasting modifier. If they fail, they take the full modifier as damage and they're pushed back 5 feet. And if they crit fail, they take double damage and are pushed 10 feet away. That ain't nothing. The damage scales incredibly poorly. After like level 1 or 2, this spell is pretty much useless. It only goes up every 2 spell levels, so only at character levels 5, 9, 13, and 17, which means a level 20 version of Galeblast is only dealing 4d6 plus 5 or plus 6. It's not great, but having the ability to push people away from you on a cantrip should not be underestimated. It's also just really nice to get more damaging cantrip options, and for a close-range spellcaster like a melee druid, that's really cool. Gouging Claw is a really cool one available to arcane and primal spellcasters, and honestly, I love it. I have this on my druid character who I'm going to be playing very soon. I'm very excited to play Boulder. Yeah, he's a druid named Boulder. Fight me. For 2 actions, you turn your open hand into a claw and deal 1d6 plus spellcasting mod as either piercing or slashing damage, your choice, and this is a spell attack roll. It's still a melee attack, but it uses your spellcasting attack roll instead of strength or dex. And if you happen to critically hit, you deal 1d4 persistent bleed damage on top of the double. That's really cool. The damage heightens really well too. The 1d6 damage is to be expected, but the persistent damage goes up by a d4 every time. If you cast this at level 9 as a 5th level spell, not only are you dealing 5d6 plus 5, but you're also inflicting 5d4 persistent bleed? Gross. Praise be to Paizo, clerics have another damaging cantrip. Haunting Him is a new cantrip available to divine and occult casters, and it is AoE daze. Mostly. This is a 15-foot cone cantrip. First off, that's insane. That's how big a 15-foot cone is. That's like Burning Hands, I think. Yeah, same area as Burning Hands on a cantrip. Of course, it only deals your spellcasting mod in damage, but only. This is now a cantrip that could potentially hit 3 or more characters for 4 damage at level 1. Now, it is a fortitude save, which is really rough. If they crit fail, they're deafened for a minute. That's pretty cool. The big problem with this, and I guess I understand why, is it only heightens every 2 spell levels. So, once again, after level 2 or 3, this isn't going to be that useful. You know, if your character level 5, this does 1d6 plus 4 damage. That's it. So, really strong early on. You know, if you catch 3 enemies inside of that and they all fail, that's 12 damage on a cantrip. That's really good. But the scaling kills it in anything beyond early game, which is unfortunate. Sorry, clerics. But at least at that point, clerics will have more offensive options at higher levels. Healing Plaster is hilarious, but also really useful for those games where everyone forgot to buy healer's tools. You pick up a handful of mud and you make it magical. You can then slap it on somebody and use the mud in place of healer's tools. This is way more useful than it sounds. If you lost your tools, if they broke, if they were stolen, if you just don't have them for any reason, you now always have healer's tools. Now this is only for primal casters, so pretty much just what? Witches, sorcerers, and druids? I think that's it. Oh, summoners now too. They always have healer's tools, which is really, really good, especially on a druid who's already going to have a good wisdom skill. Being able to just pick up some mud and make a medicine check is fantastic. And once your character level 5, these give a +1 to your medicine checks like they're advanced healer's tools. This is actually incredible, and what's nice is you don't even need to use it right away. You can pick the mud up, enchant it, and then shove the mud in your pocket, and you can use it within the 10-minute period. Another really good fact about this spell is you don't have to make the medicine check. If you have a cleric who is a master in medicine, and you're only trained, but you're the druid, you can pick up the mud, enchant it with Healing Plaster, and give it to the cleric. This is a fantastic cantrip and will save lives. I adore this. Infectious Enthusiasm is weird, not that strong, but I like it. For 2 actions, you give yourself a +1 bonus to a single type of check. They can be attack rolls, will saves, or charisma skills. That's it. That's all this does for you. But an ally within 30 feet of you who saw you cast the spell can spend one of their actions to gain the same bonus, because your enthusiasm is infectious. It's the name of the spell. So if you give yourself +1 to attack rolls, your fighter within 30 feet on their turn can spend an action going, "Oh, I get it," and get another critical hit. Now, this is interesting. It is not good action economy whatsoever. To give your fighter the +1 to attack rolls is basically 2 of your actions and 1 of their actions. But there is no limit to this. Unlike Guidance, which is a 1 and done and then they're immune to it, you could use this every single turn, and it lasts until the start of your ally's next turn. So if your ally uses the action to get the bonus to their attack rolls, sure, they lost 1 action, but if they attack twice, both of those attacks get a +1 to hit. Now, this is clearly designed for a bard-like character, which is unfortunate because bards already have Inspire Courage, and that's already a status bonus to attack rolls, which wouldn't stack with this. But this is also available to an arcane caster. If you wanted to make a cool support wizard, that could be a lot of fun. Also, don't underestimate the bonus to will saves if you know you're fighting something that might try to control you in some way. And the charisma-based skill is mostly only useful for feinting and intimidating. There's a line there at the end I'm sure you've read by now that says, hey, you can use this in a social situation, but if someone sees you using it, you lose the bonus anyway because they know you tried to make yourself more charismatic magically, which makes them kind of sketched out, and it cancels itself out. So really cool spell. You're sacrificing action economy for an infinitely reusable bonus, which I think is a very fair trade. You know, how far will you go to give your ranger that +1 to attack rolls? I want to see more spells like this, honestly. More spells, and I haven't read through all the Secrets of Magic spells. There might be more of these in there, but spells that sacrifice action economy like this for really interesting abilities. Not necessarily overpowered, but maybe getting around things that usually cause the target to be immune, like guidance, but this will let you do it as often as you want for a lot more actions. Protect Companion is available to every spellcaster in the game and is only a single action cantrip. However, it has to target either your summoned Eidolon, if you're a summoner, or a creature with the minion trait under your control. Basically, this gives them the shield cantrip. You increase their armor class by 1 and give them a unique damage reducing reaction, and if you use that reaction, you can't cast Protect Companion again for 10 minutes. That reaction is Life Block. This is a little bit different than shield though. If you use Life Block, you reduce the damage taken by your summoned creature by 10 points, but you, the summoner or other caster that summoned this creature, lose 5 hit points. Hilariously, even if you use this to reduce, say, 2 damage to 0, you still lose 5 hit points. The hit points you lose is not dependent on the damage you prevented. So this sort of like sacrifices your health as a cost to use it, which I like. You also don't suffer any of the effects. If it would be a poisoned attack, like a Viper's Fang, the target that you protected, your summoned creature, would still be the one to make the saving throw and suffer the effects. The heightened effect is interesting. This only heightens every 2 spell levels, characters 5, 9, 13, and 17, and when it does, you can reduce the damage by an additional 10, but you lose an additional 5 hit points. This has some interesting follow-up text, though, and it's sort of been a point of contrition for a lot of the Pathfinder community, so I'd love to see some conversation down in the comments about this. Can you downcast a cantrip? I've heard both sides, and I don't even know which way is as written or as intended at this point. But Protect Companion specifically states, if you don't want to lose as many hit points, you can reduce the amount of damage blocked as though you were lowering the level of Protect Companion without actually lowering the level of the spell. So, say you are level 5, and you don't want to sacrifice 10 hit points. You'd rather just sacrifice 5 hit points to reduce their damage by 10. Well, you can do that. The spell will still be a 3rd level spell, but it'll only have the 1st level effect. So this is completely different, and we've never seen text like this on any other spell to my knowledge. So with this being said, does it mean you can't downcast cantrips unless they say so, or you can, and this just lets you do it without lowering the level for counteract purposes? There's a lot to talk about here, and I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about it, so let me know in the comments. Let's move on to the next one. This is a cool thing. I love seeing summoned creature support beyond something like a summoner. I love playing Conjuration Wizards, so this is right up my alley. Puff of Poison is easily one of my favorite new cantrips introduced by Secrets of Magic, and might be one of my favorite cantrips, period. For 2 actions, you target a single creature with a Fortitude saving throw within 5 feet of you. They make a Fortitude save against your spell mod in poison damage and 2 persistent poison damage. If they critically succeed, of course nothing happens. If they succeed, they take half damage and half of the persistent damage. This is a cantrip that on a success inflicts persistent poison damage. If a creature has a weakness to poison, this will be the single strongest option against them. If they fail, they take full initial and full persistent, and if they crit fail, they take double initial and double persistent poison damage. Let me paint that for you. At level 1, that could be as much as 8 poison damage and 4 persistent poison damage, which could last the rest of the fight. Again though, like a lot of these new cantrips, for some reason this one scales horribly, only increasing every 2 spell levels, the poison damage increasing by 1d8, and the persistent poison only increasing by 1. This is okay. You use this cantrip for the persistent damage. You inflict them with that and then move on to a harder hitting cantrip like Produce Flame or Electric Arc, but this is amazing. What this is also great for, and I've had personal experience with it, it's fun, is the small riding summoner. A summoner who has mount form on their Eidolon can ride their Eidolon and cast Puff of Poison using their Eidolon as the source. So I was playing a tiny sprite riding on a medium Eidolon, but because I was mounted up on him, I could just Puff of Poison as though they were standing in front of my Eidolon. It's so good. It does not scale well, but I greatly enjoy this cantrip. Read the Air should not be a spell. It is only available to divine and occult casters, and I'll talk more about why it shouldn't be a spell after I explain it. For 2 actions, you read the room. You get to recall knowledge using society to know information about exactly what is going on. You also get a +1 to the next diplomacy check involved in the situation so long as it's made within 1 minute. That's the whole thing. That's the entire effect of this spell. And why isn't it a society skill feat? Intimidation gets all these cool upgrades. Why can't this just be a society skill feat? I will tell you, society is one of my favorite skills in the game, but aside from using it to learn more about the city you're in or find information about something in a city, it's not that useful. I almost always have to tell my players to roll society to see if they know something. They don't typically roll society themselves for any real purpose. Read the Air would have been an awesome level 2 skill feat for the society skill. Require trained in society and literally make it this. You recall knowledge using society, you gain information about what's going on around you, and a +1 to diplomacy to involve yourself in the conversation. This should not be a spell. It's a cool effect, I really like it, but it should be a skill feat. I'm sorry, I don't like this as a cantrip. Scatter Spree is a lot of fun. For 2 actions, you pick 2 5-foot squares, however they do need to be connected. The creatures within those squares need to make a basic reflex save, and those 2 squares become difficult terrain for 1 minute. It's a basic reflex save against 1d4 plus spell mod damage, which ain't bad. That is the same as Electric Arc, and this creates difficult terrain. The only limitation here is that they do need to be 2 connected squares. Now, a creature can spend a single action to, kick the rocks away and stop the difficult terrain, but it's still a really cool cantrip. I love that we got an earth cantrip, because the closest thing we had before this was telekinetic projectile with a rock. So seeing an actual earth element cantrip is a lot of fun. I really enjoy it, and it scales by 1d4 damage per spell level. This is just a really, really cool and solid damaging cantrip. Speaking of elemental cantrips we didn't have before, water has Spout, and this is a really, really cool one. You pick a single 5-foot cube within 30 feet, including a 5-foot cube in the air, and any creature in that cube must make a reflex save against 1d4 plus spell mod damage, very similar to Scatter Spree. So at first you might think, okay, this is just half the damage of Scatter Spree, but you can use it in the air, right? Well, no, because if you're using this near a source of water, you can make the source of water the main cube of Spout. And that 5-foot cube becomes a 5-foot burst attack, which means this can affect 9 squares of damaging 1d4 plus spell mod bludgeoning damage, provided the enemies are all surrounding the cube that you're using to explode it. So say you're fighting and swimming in a lake with like some bandits or something, everyone's in the water, you can pick a 5-foot square at the surface of the lake and detonate it in a massive spout of water that hits every single square around it and the square itself. The only limitation is it does need to be a decently sized source of water. So unfortunately, you can't just carry around a bucket of water, throw it into the air, and cast a burst on it, no matter how cool that sounds to me. As a GM, I would totally allow that as a 3-action activity. Throw the bucket and then just spout it to burst it in midair. That'd be too cool, come on. And just like Scatter Spree, damage scales up by 1d4 per spell level. This is a fun one. This is probably one of the hardest cantrips to use well, but if the opportunity presents itself, it is easily the most damaging cantrip in the game. Tame is pretty interesting. It's only available to primal and occult casters, which is an interesting mix of traditions. For 2 actions, you target a single non-hostile domesticated animal. This does not work on wild animals, and it does not work on domesticated animals that are currently chewing your arm off. That creature makes a will save, and if they fail, their attitude towards you increases by 1 step, such as like unfriendly to neutral. When this gets heightened, the duration increases from 1 minute to 10 minutes, and then it increases all the way up to 1 hour. This is fun, and honestly could be used really, really cruelly. If you become like really good friends with like an NPC's dog, you could just cast Tame on them, and then if they already really like you, they'll like you more, and you could probably just take their dog, and the dog would be okay with it. Until the spell wore off, of course, and then you'd just be stuck with a dog who kinda likes you. Obviously, though, this is designed to be used on guard dogs that might just be wary of you, but not hostile of you. I kinda wish this could be used on wild animals, but I guess it would just make travel a little too easy. I don't know, it's an okay cantrip. I don't think it does anything that nature couldn't already do, but I suppose putting it in a cantrip is fine. Wash Your Luck is kinda cool, though it's very specific when and if it'll ever be useful. For 2 actions, you kind of do something. You do your own little ritual to cleanse yourself of bad juju. Then, for the next minute, if you would ever be affected by a misfortune effect, you cancel it. I don't know exactly how often this could be useful, but if you're cursed or something, if you have a cursed item, and you know that cursed item gives you misfortune when you roll a specific check, you can wash your luck first and then make that check and be fine. Other than that, a lot of misfortune effects seem to come pretty rarely and pretty shockingly, like you don't necessarily see them coming, but as long as you have time to prepare for it, Wash Your Luck just makes you immune to misfortune, which is kinda cool. Not bad. Not exciting really, but not bad. And those are all of the cantrips that were added in Secrets of Magic. There is quite a few of them. A lot of them I really, really like. We finally got some really awesome new damaging cantrips that do more than just change the damage type. They're all more unique to use, more interesting, and somewhat difficult to use with greater rewards, which is exactly what I want. We got some stupid, kind of useless spells like Approximate, which I love. You know, Sigil at level 1 is still one of my favorite cantrips, and I'm sure Approximate will scratch the exact same itch. So that is going to be it for me. I want to give a shout out to 2 very special groups of people. The first one being, of course, my patrons who support me through all of this. You are all absolutely incredible. I love you. Mwah. Thank you so much for helping me do what I do. I also want to thank Roll for Combat, our generous sponsor. Use the link in the description to check out their entire Battle Zoo line of supplements. They've got a lot of cool stuff. Like I said, the Battle Zoo Bestiary is already available for purchase right now, and you can get immediate PDF access right when you buy it. And you can also check out all their other cool stuff coming real soon. And also, of course, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no nat ones.